All right, let's talk about one of the most common headaches for anyone learning Spanish. You think you have the rules down, and then bam, a verb comes along that makes no sense. Well, if that sounds familiar, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're cracking the case of the yo form mystery.
So you spend all this time learning the rules, right? You know that for an ER verb like comer, I eat is yo como. It's logical. So when you see the verb hacer, which means to do, you think, okay, I do must be yo hago. Makes sense, but it's wrong. It's hago. And it just feels totally random. But what if I told you it's not random at all? There's actually a secret pattern hiding right there.
Okay, check this out. This table really pinpoints the problem perfectly. Look at the verb hacer. Tú haces, él hace, nosotros hacemos. All of these follow the normal, predictable pattern for verbs. It's only that first one, the yo form, that decides to go completely rogue. This, right here, this is the heart of our mystery.
So let's give our mystery a name. We need to define exactly what we're dealing with here because we're talking about a very specific type of verb that only breaks the rules in this one specific way.
They're called yo-form irregulars. And hey, the name pretty much gives it all the way, right? They are only irregular in the yo form. And here's the good news. This isn't just some big, scary list of random exceptions. There are clear, predictable patterns that once you see them are going to make perfect sense.
Let's start with the biggest pattern of them all. Seriously, if you can spot this one, you've already solved a huge chunk of the mystery. This is the most common clue you'll find.
And here it is, the go pattern. You can see it so clearly right here. Hacer becomes hago. Poner, to put, becomes pongo. Salir, to leave, salgo. And traer, to bring, you guessed it, traigo. A bunch of other super common verbs do this too, like tener and decir. They just add a go to the end for the yo form.
And here it is out in the wild. Yo hago la tarea todos los días. See, once you know the rule, it doesn't sound weird at all. It sounds completely natural. The key is just recognizing that hago is just hacer, following this special yo rule.
All right, let's move on to our next clue. This pattern is a little more specific, but it is just as predictable. You're going to see this one pop up with verbs that end in CR or CIR.
This is what I call the Zesco code. Look at conocer, to know. It becomes conozco. Conducir, to drive, becomes conduzco. You see what's happening? A Z just gets inserted right before the C. It's mostly to make the pronunciation flow a little better, and it creates this super consistent pattern for this whole group of verbs.
Here's a classic example you'll hear all the time. Yo conozco a Maria. Again, you're not saying yo conozco, you're adding that Z sound to make it conozco. Once you train your brain to look for those verbs ending in ser or sir, this pattern gets way easier to spot.
Okay, so we've got the go verbs and the SCO verbs, but there are a few other incredibly common verbs that kind of do their own thing. These guys don't really fit a big pattern, but you're going to see them so often that they are absolutely essential to know.
And here they are. These are some of the most used verbs in the entire Spanish language. Ir, to go, becomes voy. Dar, to give, becomes doy. Estar, to be, is estoy. Saber, to know, is a short one, just say. And ver, to see, is veil. Honestly, for these guys, it just comes down to repetition, because you will hear them and use them constantly.
For instance, you just can't talk about going somewhere without this verb. Yo voy a la escuela. Simple, common, and a perfect example of one of these unique yo-form irregulars in action.
All right, now just when you think you've got it all figured out, Spanish throws you a little curveball. There's a twist. What happens when one of these yo-form irregular verbs is also a stem-changing verb? And this makes it crystal clear. Let's take the verb tener, to have. In the yo form, it follows our go rule, yo tengo. But look what happens in the to form. The stem-changing rule kicks in, and that E flips to an IE, tú tienes. So yeah, a verb can have two different kinds of irregularities. But here's the crucial part. The yo form rule always takes priority for the yo form. It wins every time.
So there you have it. The yo form mystery is officially solved. Let's do a really quick recap of all the clues so you're ready for your mission, actually using these verbs out in the real world.
Let's put all the pieces together. First, remember, this weirdness only happens in the yo form. Everything else is regular. Second, use those patterns we found as your guide, the go, the zgo, and the oy. And third, know that these verbs are everywhere in real Spanish. Seriously, memorizing them early is a total game changer.
So, the most important thing to remember is this. What feels like a bunch of random, frustrating exceptions is actually a system. It's just a different set of patterns that only applies to the yo form for these specific verbs. Once you learn to recognize the patterns, all that chaos just disappears.
So now you have the tools. You know how to decode this core piece of Spanish grammar. The only question is, are you ready to go out there and start spotting them, and more importantly, using them with confidence?